G'day everyone, Carl here. Thank you for joining us again for another episode on the Real Agent Podcast. Today I'm very honoured to be joined by Peter Hutton of Hutton and Hutton. How are you going, Peter?
I'm very well. I'm very honoured to be sitting in your car and talking things about real estate.
Fantastic. Well, it's funny, I think you and I actually first met back in your training days. I sponsored one of your events.
You did? I remember that very clearly. I can't remember what we were training on, but anyway.
It was definitely real estate related, I should mention.
I remember putting your banner up.
That's it, yeah. Because I think you were doing a bit of a tour at the time.
I was, yeah.
So Hutton and Hutton, now that you've been running that agency for 18 months, is it?
Yeah, I think so. March last year we really kicked off, just working from home.
Yep.
But Karen and I...
In your pyjamas, I think I remember.
Yeah, half the time in my PJs. But that worked.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And so tell us what's happened in the last 18 months. Give the guys an idea of what's happened with your agency, the growth, what you've sold.
Yep. Well, like you create a plan. I created a plan, and that plan didn't go to plan. So we sort of went to plan B pretty much straight away. And what that was, we started out with the plan to do listings and sell real estate just as a small brokerage would, running from home, just with our old client list and private clients, that sort of thing. And then we ran one ad for an old client for an apartment, and that went into the Courier Mail. So actually, this is a good plug for the Courier Mail. Just shows you what it can do for you.
Printed media.
Printed media. So I went into the Courier Mail, and I got a call the following week from a development manager for a project at Toowong, and he said, "I think I've got a project for you." So I went, well, in my mind I thought, there's no way we're going to do this, because I used to be in project marketing many years ago before we opened up our original agency in 2001. I was a director of marketing for quite a large development company and a shareholder in the real estate part of that business, and I swore off doing project sales. I thought I'd never do it again. I always felt beholden to the developer, but I guess I was just working for one developer and part of that, so that's a different scenario.
So you sort of justified that.
Yeah. So I rationalised it all, and the money was put before me, and I've said to Karen, we could earn some reasonable money this year, and I know we all talk about passion, and you have to follow your passion and stuff, but I believe in going where the energy is.
Yep.
And the energy was definitely there. So I've gone, let's just do it. What have we got to lose? If anything, we've moved our plans back 12 months, and this could actually really put some extra capital in our bank account. And yeah, so we had a very good year last year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we've kind of jumped ahead a little bit on your journey through real estate life.
Yes.
So take us back to the beginning. How did you get into real estate? Where did things start for you?
Well, long story, Carl. Long story short, pre-1994, I was in the wool trade, and I was in Melbourne. I was people say to me, they always remember me as a wool classer. Well, that was a long time ago, and I was a wool classer originally, but I ended up in an international trading company by the name of Dalgety, and I headed up eventually I headed up their wool sales throughout the world, and I was managing sales in the order of about $170 million worth of sales a year, gross sales, and that in today's money is worth about $500 million. And you've got to remember, back in those days, Australia literally rode on the sheep's back, or sort of rode on the sheep's back, and we were bigger than coal, only second to tourism. So there was a lot of money in the wool industry, and then it crashed in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a young family, and Karen was fed up with living in Sydney and Melbourne and me being away, travelling a lot. So we made the decision to come back to Brisbane. We set up this business in financial planning. I had no idea how to do it, and it consequently failed big time. So we'd sold all our properties to do that venture, and I lost the lot.
Wow.
And went down the gurgler. So that was not a good beginning as a young parent, and 30 years of age with a second child on the way. So I've gone, okay, panic. So I've decided to go back into real estate, or not go back, go into real estate. I say go back into real estate because I'd been buying and selling property since I was about 21. So I always had this affinity for property, and in my 20s I bought a small block of units and strata titled them, and so I learnt, had renovated properties and subdivided properties. So I'd done a fair bit in my 20s in property. So I felt like if I'm not doing wool, I'll just do property. Surely it can't be that much different. And so I started in '94 with Spiro Conneus at Conneus Apollo Ascot. I chose them because to me he represented a boutique brand. I wanted to be in a sort of a company that sort of had high values and was doing something different, and he certainly was back in those days. And the Conneus Apollo group had 6 offices. All the brothers owned that, so it was all company owned. And so that's where I got my start.
Wow.
So, and stayed there for 9 months, did pretty well. I ended up being the #1 agent out of the 6 offices for my last quarter in with Spiro, but was very hungry to learn more and felt constrained there, and saw an opportunity to go into project sales with QM Properties. I don't know if you've heard of them.
You have, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I went into that and did really well, but didn't like the culture of it. For all you smokers out there, I was a smoker too, and I suddenly saw myself as a smoker amongst 20 other salespeople all smoking and drinking Coca-Cola in the morning. And I thought to myself, if I keep doing this, I'm going to be dead before my kids are grown up. So I got out of that, and I ended up with another company called Petrack, and a property development company. And I eventually became a director in that company, and worked for them till 2001. And I said to my partners, I saw an opportunity in the valley because of, there'd been some recent changes to the town plan. And I said, look, within 10, 15 years, there's going to be apartments everywhere from Newstead through to the CBD, and everybody's going to be building apartments. They didn't sort of really buy into that. And I thought, I'm going to go and open up an agency. And so we did.
Yeah, right.
In Robertson Street of all places, and that's where we are now. We've literally gone full circle. And I'm 5 meters away from my original office, would you believe, which is hilarious. So, but the place has changed. We're off, for the listeners, we're off James Street in Fortitude Valley, which is a fashion area of Brisbane.
Yes, yep.
Very well supported with marketing from the local property owners in the area. They've got their own management of the whole street.
Wow, okay.
So it brings in a lot of people. They do a lot of events, and I just wanted to be there. And especially after last year of doing the project sales, I got the taste for it again. I thought, well, Fortitude Valley is very central in terms of there's always property developers, going out for breakfast at Harvey's and places. So I thought, Karen and I just live 100 meters away. So
very easy commute.
Well, it wasn't as good as working from home, but it was just nearly as good. Next best thing. So that's what we did.
So when you opened up your first real estate agency, that became quite big. That was a fairly
2001. Big. We stayed in Robertson Street for 3 years, and we were constrained by the space. We had 40 square meters. That's what we're in now. Mm-hmm. And we had 5 people on the team there. And it got to a point where I knew I had to move into more space to grow up. I hadn't thought of any other way, and I'm not saying it was the wrong way, but things are being done differently today than back in those days. Technology has changed and all of that. For instance, we had my first server for the office, computer server in 2001, cost me about $15,000, and it was gigantic, and you needed a room for it because it was so noisy. So you needed the space for that, and you needed the space for all of this other paraphernalia for real estate filing and stuff like that. So we moved down to Brunswick Street, where McGrath's are now, just off Merthyr Road, and into 150 square metre space, and I quickly filled that as well. Wow. And then, we went through 2008 was a really crappy year, as you know. I was a single sole director on my own, really didn't have anybody to bounce stuff off, and that's the downside with I think a boutique agency or an independent. unless you've got a really good mentor or external business partner or somebody you can bounce ideas off, it's a pretty lonely place.
Sure. Yeah.
And I just got to the point where we had a really couple of good 2 or 3 really good years, and we had a rent roll, and I thought, now's the time if I'm going to make a change. Let's sell the rent roll, move to Byron Bay. I was painting a fair bit at that time, and selling a bit of art, and I thought to myself, move to Byron, become an artist, so easy. Actually, big mistake. So got very bored down there, spent all my money again, and realised we better get back into real estate and earn some dollars again. And we moved back to Brisbane.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so is it that time when you came back, you decided to start looking at training and mentoring of other agents?
Actually, I was really open. I was thinking I could start an agency. I could work for, there was an appeal to work for another agency just as a salesperson, because I thought I'd back myself. I could go in there, establish myself, maybe take a year or so to re-establish myself and make sales. So I did speak to agencies.
Yep.
And started to put the feelers out. And then I called an old client of mine, a property developer, and I said, I'm back in real estate. I don't know what I'm doing yet. He said, would you like to come out and have a coffee and have a chat? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. He said, I'm meeting with Peter Hanscombe, the CEO of Bell Property. Would you like to meet with him? And I went, why not?
Okay.
And then shortly after that, Peter offered me a job, and I worked for Bell for 12 months, which was fantastic, great organisation.
You were the training director?
Well, for Queensland, and also my role was to support or help out where I could with IP. And so I travelled down to Sydney regularly and spent time with Peter Hanscombe. And he's a great guy, and learned a lot from Peter, so that was really awesome. And got the taste for training at that point. And, once self-employed, it's pretty hard to go back. So we parted company on good terms, and I went off and did my own thing and trained, and that went well. Not as well as I'd hoped, to be honest. It could have been a lot better. And good money, but I never felt as motivated doing that as I did when I was selling real estate and building my own brand up in my agency under the original company, Hutton Real Estate.
So this is a bit of a loaded question, but how did you find being on the other side, actually training and working with agents rather than being an agent? How did you find agents to work with?
That's a very good question. You know how you said earlier, there might be a question I may not want to answer. No, but I will answer this. But well, I think the thing is that the reality is I'd never been a trainer prior to being a trainer.
Yeah.
And there's a skill set in itself which I'd underestimated, for starters. So I've always been told I'm a good mentor, I'm a great mentor, and I've had really great feedback, and people, I've got Julie Jackson-Lemaire's joined me from McGrath. She worked for me before, she's come back to me. I didn't chase her, she's come to me because, she heard I was opening up an office, and she, wanted to be around me to help her and to, mentor her as well. So I've always been a mentor, and I thought that would go straight into training. It would relate to training, and it's different. And I really admire the Tom Panoses of the world, Josh Fegan, spring to mind. There's many others. So please, if you're listening to this, I'm sure you're not, but you probably are. No, I'm sorry. I'm sure you are from this guy's point of view, but not from me. No trainers wanting to listen to Peter Hutton, but So I learned that that it's a tough gig, and I admire those trainers. They give of themselves. Peter Brewers give of themselves. All of those guys. Glenn Twiddle, they're all out there really sharing and helping and passing on knowledge, and as you are too with these podcasts, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. Not that I'm not a sharer or a giver, But I did learn something while I was training about myself. In all of that time, I learned what my true skill set is, and that is brand development. And I had a taste of that because I did some brand development work with Michael Devlin and a few others, and really enjoyed that process. And then I realized, as much as I like doing that and helping and giving tips and advice and working out ideas with other agents and agencies, I actually should be doing it just for myself.
Right.
That's where the joy is, and that's what I've I guess reconnected to, and actually in a much bigger way than when I had my original agency. I found, like, in my original agency, I got to, from 2001 to 2004, I was really engaged in my brand. From 2005, I think this is a real lesson to independent agents out there, agency owners who are wanting to develop a brand, and that is, you sort of develop a way and get your branding and get your processes in place, and then it goes into, I call it maintenance. I'm sure others call it a maintenance, mode of business, where you're maintaining your business, you're managing your business, and some independent agency owners, and probably many, are very, very good at that. But I'm actually, that's not my strength. Like, I can manage a business, but I do it nearly begrudgingly. It's like, do I really have to do this? It's not hard. It's just not fun.
Sure.
And I'm in my 50s, and life to me is about doing stuff you love doing. You've got to be realistic as well, and you've got to make money. And if you want to go and travel the world and stuff like that, like we do, but you've also you've got to look at what your strengths are, and what really gets you up in the morning. And Tom Panos talks about Big Why. Many people talk about the Big Why. I've coached in that area as well for many years, and mentored people, find your passion. So you've got to find that, and I probably never listened to that well enough myself, but now I have. And and I was saying that, in 2004, I probably should have reinvented Hutton real estate at that point. It was due for a reinvention, or the next step, but I didn't do that. I just kept it in maintenance mode, and my personality type gets stressed at that point. So the stress of running a business just got to me, and by 2008, I was just like, that's it. I'm
worn out.
I was worn out.
Yeah.
But we're approaching it differently now, and I'm approaching it much differently than before.
So you've always been a big proponent of independent, though. I think you've always been a big fan of the independent agency, doing your own branding and things like that. Where does that sort of just stem from your own personal experience, or is there something that's sort of given you that driver in comparison to someone adopting the franchise model?
Well, look, I actually think the franchise model is probably the smarter thing to do. There you go.
It's the less crazy thing, isn't it?
It's a less crazy thing to do. It's I see some. I know, been around long enough in real estate to know a lot of principles. Even before I started in real estate in '94, I knew principles because of my buying and selling a property. So and I see the ones that have stuck in franchise mode and have done very, very well out of it, built a considerable asset base because of it, and my hat's off to them, and I admire that. But the reality is, you've got to understand your drivers, and I think one of the things I did understand in myself prior to opening up Hutton Real Estate in 2001 was that I am by nature a creative person. So creativity is my driver.
Right.
And working not that you can't be creative, so there might be a few people listening to this who are in franchise saying, oh, but you can be creative, and that's true. But you haven't got ultimate say of the brand.
There's more limitations, I think that's for sure.
There's a head office telling you, and some franchises are stricter than others. But there's ultimately, it's fair to say, there is a series of limitations within that brand of how far you can go.
Yeah.
Remax say there's no limitations. Well, I'd like to see them an office get rid of the balloon and put something else in its place. Ain't going to happen. So there are limitations, and for me, being creative, that type of limitation is very constraining and sort of soul destroying for me. So
sure,
independency is what it's about. It's not about a better model, because I believe you can be very successful in real estate in so many different ways, and I've seen it. So I'd be a fool to say that you can be more successful in one model over another. There's many examples of success on all shapes and form in all different levels of real estate and all different types of real estate businesses and practices. So yeah, it's just about creativity for me, Carl.
Sure. And so with the business that you've now built up, a lot of your transactions occur more at the developer level. What do you find that shelters you somewhat from the disruptors, and I use inverted commas, the disruptors like the open agents? Because obviously your developers aren't searching for real estate agents on open agent.
Yeah.
Do you sort of feel? Do you still feel the pressure from those platforms, or is it a bit
No,
more sheltered?
I don't feel the pressure from those platforms whatsoever. And even if I was doing brokerage, and this might sound arrogant, I don't mean it to be arrogant. I just back my own marketing to not feel like I'm beholden to any portal or any platform other than my own.
Yeah.
I've always been, and this is the independent person in me. When I had Hutton Real Estate, realestate.com, how long has it been going? Since 94 or 93 or something or other. When I opened up in 2001, realestate.com was there. It was evident that it was the major portal. It was, the writing was on the wall. People talk about disruption. They rarely talk about disruption in terms of realestate.com coming about. I've been saying it for years, that realestate.com is the original disruptor.
Yes.
It disrupted the whole industry, and anybody who's worked in the industry pre-realestate.com knows what I'm talking about. It's an entirely different industry now because of realestate.com, and the internet has changed absolutely everything in real estate, and it continues to have that disruption. So getting back to your question about open agent, etc. I believe in investing in your own systems of lead generation and not being beholden to anybody. That's the independent in me. For instance, I've launched my own lead generation for luxury buyers of apartments. And we've kicked that off. It's a different URL, and it's already generating high quality leads for us, and it's bringing in business. So my view is you've got to, he who owns the buyer inquiry wins. That's why realestate.com has won.
Yes. Yep.
But there are many ways to do that, and you don't have to be big. You just have to be targeted.
Yes.
And so I'm very targeted oriented, and you'd appreciate that being a marketer yourself. It's about how do I bring in those leads and those inquiries. So yeah, but project sales, it is, I've got developers who are coming to us, one because Ryan Ledicoat, who's part of our team and heading up our projects, and he's got a very good reputation in project sales. He's been doing it for a long time, as have I. So we both are bringing developers in, and they're watching us because we're small, which is great because they're watching what we're doing. They're not watching so much what others are saying, because other developers aren't going to talk well of us on some share site that they share feedback on.
Sure.
That's not how it works. They're looking at what we're marketing, how quick we're selling things, how we're doing promotions and things like that. So it's early days for us. So I don't want to put the kibosh on anything and brag about it. We're really just starting out, but we're doing okay.
Absolutely. And do you think you spoke about, obviously you being very targeted there in the business that you go after? Do you think that niching down has really helped you solidify your position and your target client?
Look, I do. I'll never forget Damien Hackett, one of the directors of Place, saying to me back in 2001, I keep forgetting my dates, but 2001 or 2002, we're both heading to a similar function somewhere, and we're chatting, and he made the point to me, and I hope this is right to say this, Damien, but you either be big or you be small. But being in the middle ground is pretty hard.
Right.
And I totally agree with him on that. And so, we've always chosen to be small, sort of for that reason. I do believe in it. So why I mention that about Damien Hackett, be big or small, is that I believe if you're small and we're for instance, and I'll just talk firsthand, our experience, Hutton, for instance, last year, it's just Karen and I working from home, yet we landed a $75 million project to sell. No infrastructure whatsoever other than our laptops and our mobile phone.
Mm.
That's all we had. But we still did it because we put up an argument about who we were, and we branded ourselves to that developer, that niched ourselves, that matched his niche for that project perfectly.
Yep.
And that went really well. I believe that if you're going to be small, you have to be niched. It's very hard to compete with the Ray Whites of this world, the McGraths, the Places, the LJ Hookers, you name it, the big agencies, the Bell Property now, because they're, I see them as a big agency group. They're big like Ray White, they're big like LJ Hooker and Harcourt. They're all big agencies now. They're not small agencies. And they've got brand awareness and all of that. So the only way to compete with them is to not compete on their terms. You can't compete on their terms. So you've got to look for a different way. When I had Hutton Real Estate and New Farm in 2001, Ray White was the big agency. So I looked closely at what they did. I studied them very, very closely. I even went to a Ray White training one day. I don't know how I got myself invited into that, but I did, and it was very good. It was great because I learned a lot about them, and with great respect. You always should respect your enemies, and I don't say enemy in a negative way. I say it in a sense of playing sport or whatever.
Yep.
You respect your opponent, and when you have respect for your opponent, you have the opportunity to learn and succeed. If you don't have respect, you'll always lose. So I respect my opponents, and I learned a lot about Ray White, and so I realised that they were very strong on auction, so I just did the opposite of what they were doing back in those days. It was quite simplistic. Now, we're a bit more sophisticated in the way we go about things because I've learned a lot more. There's a really great, I don't know if you've ever seen it, in America, there's a company, I'm not sure if they're in the United States or Canada, I've got a feeling they're in Canada. It's called Best Made Co. And they started out making axes. This guy had a passion for axes.
I feel like I've heard this. Yeah.
And these axes are handmade and handcrafted. They're stunning. And that company has done extremely well. But just imagine like Bunnings opening up in an area next door to a small hardware shop. Both offering nails and hammers and axes and shovels and wheelbarrows, etc.
Very much commodity-based items.
So Bunnings is always going to win, hands down. Even if the little place has good service, ultimately the Bunnings has proven to win across Australia.
Yeah.
The same thing with Ray White. They're a big agency. If you're in next to them, you're going to be in their shadows if you're small, and so you've got to offer something different, and you've got to come from a different point of view. Otherwise, you're just competing on their playing field, and they're bigger, and they're going to beat you. And that's why niching comes in, because a big general agency like the Ray White Group will have agents within their agency that niche, no doubt. But generally speaking, the public don't see it that way. They see the agency as a general agency that cover everything, from all price range, all types, and so on. So from an agency perspective that's small, if you do it niche, then you do make that little brand stand out. The only thing is you do paint yourself into a corner somewhat. So you've got to choose a niche that
it's big enough to service.
Big enough to service. It's going to be around long enough, And you can also just niche your marketing as well. So I often just niche my marketing. That's why I've set up separate independent little websites
Yeah.
that
And
are highly niched. And sometimes they work and often they don't work. So,
Yeah. But I say that to agents all the time. I say, you don't have to, because you do hear gurus sort of say, the best feeling in the world is when you say no to business and this kind of, it doesn't necessarily need to be about that. But you can absolutely make a choice about where you spend your marketing dollars. It doesn't mean that, you can niche down and you can be the first home buyer advocate and you can be the person who attracts the properties that are best for first home buyers. It doesn't mean you're not going to sell, something that's not for first home buyers, but when you spend your marketing dollars, you can absolutely choose who you're going to target while you're doing that. You don't have to be a generalist marketing person.
That's right. I totally agree with that. And in fact, what we used to do in Hutton, when we used to list and sell all over Brisbane, and I remember one time from New Farm we listed a property at Anala, and way away from where we were, where our office was, and I don't know how that happened, but that it happened, and we did some research. We worked out how to sell that property best into that market, and there was a strong community of, I can't remember what nationality, but there was a particular group, nationality group living in the 2 or 3 streets around it. So we actually never put that property up on our website. So from a branding point of view, that property wasn't discordant with our agency or apparent because it wasn't on our website.
Right, yep.
And it went on to realestate.com, but what we did was we door knocked those streets and we sold it to a neighbour. And at the time there was a very strong element of neighbours buying properties and paying really top dollar for them because they had to have it over the neighbours. So there's a lot of competition, and that's how we sold that property. We first found out that's how to, that was the best thing to do for that property. I never had thought of that in advance when we listed it, but we went and found out, and we did it that way, and we protected our niche brand at the time, because we were representing, very well presented properties where this one wasn't, and so we didn't have, and they didn't have the money to pay for photography and so on. So I wasn't about to put a lower rate, lower quality marketed property on our website to confuse our potential people that would list with us, who are going onto our website to check us out to see how we present property for sale and things like that.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. What are you keeping your eye on right now and into the future? Like, do you have any thoughts about, obviously realestate.com was like you say, the big disruptor. Is it, and I don't just want to focus on disruptors, obviously, but is there trends in the industry? Like, I was chatting to an agent the other day, about how the UK market has one-stop shop, so they have real estate financing, insurance, etc., all under the one roof. Do you see any changes like that coming into the Australian market? And if so, what does it look like?
Look, I do. I see. I think it wouldn't surprise me if a company like Uber or Virgin or somebody like that. And Virgin, there's always been that rumor that they'll open up an agency, but there'll be some big international or national company that's not in real estate that'll go into real estate, and it's all about big data, and they've got the big data. So that's the thing. I would say look towards companies with big data, and they will have a major impact on the real estate industry if they decide to, in the future, enter real estate. And an old friend of mine whose family owned a very large national trucking business, famous trucking business, and he used to tell me that his father had this saying about risk. He said, risk is like being on the beach and in the surf, and the first wave you see coming and you can dive down. The second wave you sort of see coming, but it hits you because you've just gone down under that first wave to duck under, and you get back up and there's that other wave, and you sort of see it coming, but you're already sort of being knocked around, tussled by it and losing some energy, and so you dive down again and get knocked around a bit. But that third wave you never see coming. You never see it coming. So the thing here is a lot of people are trying to predict what the disruptor is. I'm not trying to predict it at all. I just know it's coming, and I don't care. let it come. All I've got to do is be ready and put things into place now that will protect my business, and things like database and managing our clients and looking after people and caring for people and building up a reputation, and all of those things are hard to erode, even under disruption. So that's my point of view, is just take care of business, and business will take care of you.
Yeah, awesome. Mate, was there anything else you wanted to touch on while we've got you here?
Oh, I don't know.
Is there any way, are you currently in like recruitment mode, or is there any way people can get in touch with you to chat with?
We are in recruitment mode. I mean, and I touched on this earlier, our plan is to open up multiple offices, company owned, but in partnership type arrangements. And we're not looking to find a partner today, in terms of just going to partner with somebody because they say they want a partner and they put some money up. I'm not interested in that. You know, partnerships take time, and they evolve out of goodwill and trust and understanding. So we are, you know, our model is a company-owned business. I'm not, as much as I think I could franchise, we're not going to franchise because we want to be true to the authenticity of our brand, which is a bespoke brand.
Yep.
And bespoke is the emphasis. It's about creativity and custom fit. So once you start franchising that sort of ethos sort of goes out the door. So yeah, we're looking around for people. Obviously, we're in Fortitude Valley New Farm. If one or two others joined us in New Farm, Fortitude Valley, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, awesome.
So you can call me. Can I say my email address?
Yeah, of course you can. Absolutely.
So you can email me, peter@huttonandhutton.com.au, huttonandhutton.com.au, or you can phone me on 0488 018 170.
And I'll include that in the notes as well at the end, so
Fantastic.
people can get in touch if they want to.
Yeah, thanks, Carl.
Peter, thanks so much for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been great fun, and driving around the area, it's good. Phil Schofield, like $1 Million Agent New York.
That's it. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, mate, thank you again.
Thanks, mate.